Hi everyone, I'm Kat with Calico Cali Designs. Today's video tutorial is going to be on our in the hoop sleep masks. I love these. These are fast and easy, and I mean easy to stitch out, and they block out all the light so I can actually get some sleep. Let's head over to the machine and I'll show you how they're made. Each in the hoop sleep mask collection comes with a set of PDF instructions. I encourage you to print those out and have them ready. I've also pre-cut my piece of elastic to the size that I know fits around my head, which is approximately 13.5 inches. I've pre-cut 2 pieces of batting to the 5x9 size as specified in the directions. This is tip number 1. If you use 2 pieces of batting, then the sleep mask will be a little thicker and block out even more light. You can use just 1. I'm using Hobbs 80/20 batting. I've also pre-cut my piece of fabric for the top and a piece of fabric for the back to the 5x9 size as specified in the directions. Here's tip number 2. To avoid puckering, to avoid this getting puckered when you embroider the words over it, first treat it with fabric stabilizer. This is the brand that I like. This is Sullivan's. I purchased it online. You basically just spray it all over the fabric, let it dry completely, and then iron it. We're still going to use stabilizer in our hoop, but I find that this makes the fabric just a little bit stiffer, and then I don't get any puckers. And I have already hooped a piece of tearaway stabilizer in my extra large hoop. So now I have everything I need. I have scissors at my machine already, so let's head over there and start stitching. I've loaded the design onto my machine. My hoop is in place. I have a full bobbin, so let's go. The very first thing this is going to stitch out is an outline stitch. This will be for the placement of your fabric. Okay, you see that placement line has stitched out. Now you're going to take your fabric right side up and put it on in there so that it completely covers up that placement line. You can use your painter's tape to hold it in place, and then we'll stitch out the next stitch. I have my painter's tape in place, so now we're going to stitch out the next stitch, which is simply going to go around and do a kind of another like placement stitch where it's going to tack down that fabric to the stabilizer. Now, at this point in your directions, it tells you to remove the hoop and to cut away the fabric outside of that placement stitch, leaving about 1/4 inch. You can do that now, or you can hold off and wait and cut it all off at the very end. It's up to you, whatever is easier. If you cut it now, there'll be a little less bulk in here, and the steps later on might be a little bit easier because you can see the edges more, but it's up to you. I'm going to hold off and wait and cut it at the end. The next thing I'm going to do now is change my thread so I can stitch out the word relax. All right, I've put in some green thread. You, of course, can use any color thread that you want. And now I'm just going to let it embroider the word relax. I'm going to sit back and relax while it does this. All right, the embroidery has finished. It is gorgeous. The next step is going to stitch out placement lines for the elastic. You'll want to make sure to use a thread color that differs from your original outline so that you can see where it goes. So we're just going to go ahead and let that stitch out. This first one again is just the placement. It's going to stop, and then I'm going to put my elastic in there. You can use painter's tape to keep the elastic in place if you'd like. I'm just going to kind of hold it out of the way here. And now it's going to stitch over that elastic with a satin stitch to hold it in place. Once that's done, we'll repeat the step at the other end down here. So here's tip number 3. Make sure to keep this elastic straight and don't twist it as you get down to this end. So again, I'm just going to slide that out of the way. It's going to stitch the first one, which will be the placement stitch, right there. And now, making sure that my elastic is still very straight and not twisted, I'll place my elastic in there. on top of that stitch and let it do the satin stitch right over it. And again, you can use painter's tape to hold that elastic in place so that your fingers stay away from the needle. Perfect. Now that the elastic is adhered to the sleep mask, we need to get it out of the way. So we're just going to kind of fold it over and use some painter's tape to tape it down. But make sure your painter's tape does not go outside that placement line. That's a no-no. So I usually make it kind of like a little X, keeping sure that it's inside of my placement stitching. And that's going to keep that elastic folded down out of the way so it doesn't get caught up in the next couple of steps. All right, the next step is to put down the fabric that's going to be the very back side of your mask. So in this already stitched out example, you can see this zigzag fabric here. That's the back side. If you use flannel, it's extra soft against your face. You could also use satin. We're going to put this wrong side up, and you want to make sure that it's completely covering that original outline stitch. Alrighty, completely covered. Okay. If you'd like, you can also use painter's tape at this point to hold this fabric down as well. Now you're going to put your batting on top of that, again making sure to completely cover that original outline stitch. And once again, I'm using 2 pieces of batting so that my sleep mask is just a little bit thicker. I feel like it holds out a little bit more light too. I'm very sensitive personally to light when I sleep at night. So now it's going to stitch down twice, 2 more of those outlines, securing everything in place. You can use any color thread for this, it doesn't really matter. And again, if you'd like, you can use painter's tape around the edges to hold this in place. I'm just going to kind of gently hold it with my fingers, making sure, of course, to keep them far away from the needle. I am using Hobbs 80/20 batting. You can use whatever batting you have on hand. If your batting is a little more plush than this, you can also put down a piece of water-soluble stabilizer on top before this stitched out, and that would kind of keep the plushiness out of the way so it wouldn't get caught in the needle. So now it's double back, going back over for the second time. All right, our double outline stitch has finished. Now we can remove the hoop from the machine, turn off the machine, and all the finishing steps are done at our cutting table. All right, we've taken everything out of the hoop. If you had used water-soluble stabilizer, you would remove that at this time. We're going to gently remove our tearaway stabilizer from the back here and away from our words inside there. And remember, you tear it away from your stitching. So we're going to do that. We have removed all of our tearaway stabilizer. The next step is to take your scissors and trim outside of the outline stitch. Leave about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance there. Whichever side's easier for you to see from, you can go ahead and start cutting away. All right, as you can see, we've cut away all of our extra fabric. You'll notice that the very top of it, it didn't stitch all the way closed. It left a hole for an opening. Da, 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 da. Now you will turn it right side out. When turning it right side out, I find it helpful to start with one end, and then go to the other end after that. I kind of rub my thumb along that inside edge there, or any finger, and make sure you've got all of those turned nicely. Obviously, the next step is to remove your painter's tape. So your very final and last step is going to be just to stitch this opening closed. You can do so by hand or with your machine. Cut any jump stitches that you want, and you are completely done. Beautiful, fast, easy, in the hoop sleep mask, and now you can sleep without any light interfering. Have a great night's sleep, everyone. Thanks for stopping by.